Are Medicare Advantage plans really using computer algorithms to decide what healthcare services you qualify for? I'm going to share with you a recent and very shocking article that answers that question. Now, just before we get into this article, I want to define our terms here, because I think it's important for us to understand when we talk about algorithms or computer algorithms, what exactly is that? Well, by definition, an algorithm is a step-by-step process that is completed the same way every time. It's a method or a set of instructions that is used to solve a problem. It's a process or a set of rules that is followed in making calculations or problem-solving operations by a computer. Now, by definition, an algorithm could be something as simple as a recipe, step-by-step instructions to make something. It can be a math equation. Online searching that all of us do today is accomplished through algorithms. So computer algorithms work this way. Data is entered in, the system then analyzes that information that's been given, and then it executes the correct commands to produce a desired result. All right, and so as it relates to healthcare and computer algorithms, what is happening is information goes in, and the desired result then is spit out by the system, and it makes the recommendation. And so it makes the recommendation for what they believe the healthcare should look like. So here's the problem. There's actually two of them. One of them is oftentimes this recommendation conflicts with the basic rules of what original Medicare says they will cover. Okay, and you're going to see that in an article. That's a problem. Number two, the computer cannot, it's impossible for that computer to make adjustments for the patient's individual circumstances. That computer does not understand everything that a doctor would to be able to put that into the equation. Again, it's all numbers, it's all facts, it's all figures. It's just simply data that is driving these decisions. All right, so here's what's going on. The whole industry now, Medicare Advantage industry now is using these in a great way. What started off to be just simply as a way to make suggestions. Now everyone is required to follow the algorithms, and so it's the algorithm that's dictating it, not necessarily the healthcare professionals that's working with that patient. That's a problem. And so now a whole new industry exists around these plans, predicting how many hours of therapy a patient will need, and predicting exactly when that patient will be able to leave a hospital or a nursing home. And obviously we know that's going to be impossible for the algorithm to do that. It's going to take a person also involved in that. All right, so that being said, let's get into the article. Hey, just real quick, we often hear from our viewers that they wish that they would have seen a video earlier because they made a decision that really wasn't in their best interest, or they made a decision without having this information and it cost them financially. And we don't want that to happen to you. We upload 3 times every week, and the only way you're going to know about our new videos is if you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification. We're constantly giving away brand new strategies, updates, and comparisons that you don't want to miss. So click the subscribe button below this video right now and turn on notifications so that you never miss another video. We're going to begin with a story about an 85-year-old woman. An algorithm, not a doctor, predicted a rapid recovery for Frances Walter, an 85-year-old Wisconsin woman with a shattered left shoulder and an allergy to pain medicine. In 16.6 days, it estimated that she would be ready to leave her nursing home. Again, the algorithm is the one that estimated that. On the 17th day, her Medicare Advantage insurer Security Health Plan followed the algorithm and cut off payments for her care, concluding that she was ready to return to the apartment where she lived alone. Meanwhile, medical notes in June of 2019 showed Walter's pain was maxing out the scales and that she could not dress herself, go to the bathroom, or even push a walker without help. It would take more than a year for a federal judge to conclude the insurer's decisions was at best speculative and that Walter was owed thousands of dollars for more than 3 weeks of treatment. And so they cut her off after 17 days. As you'll see, they had to keep her there. Her family did for an additional 3 weeks, and now she's responsible for those payments. All right, while she fought the denial, she had to spend down her life savings and enroll in Medicaid just to progress to the point of putting on her shoes, her arm still in a sling. Anyone that's on Medicaid qualifies for that because of limited income and assets. And so if you have income or assets, you're going to have to spend that down before you'll qualify. So she obviously had to do that. Now, health insurance companies have rejected medical claims for as long as they've been around. Let's face it, insurance companies are in the business to make a profit, and so they're going to scrutinize every claim and try to pay as few claims as possible. Okay, so there's nothing new there. But here's the difference. A stat investigation, remember Stat's the group that put this report together, found that artificial intelligence is now driving their denials to new heights in Medicare Advantage. All right, and so now we're seeing more and more problems with this tension between what the insurance company is going to pay, and so we see a lot more denials in Medicare Advantage. All right, let's keep reading. Behind the scenes, insurers are using unregulated predictive algorithms under the guise of scientific rigor to pinpoint the precise moment when they can plausibly cut off payments for an older patient's treatment. The denials that follow are setting off heated disputes between doctors and insurers, often delaying treatment of seriously ill patients who are neither aware of the algorithms nor able to question their calculations. Older people who spent their lives paying into Medicare are now facing amputation, fast-spreading cancers, and other devastating diagnoses, are left to either pay for their care themselves or get by without it. If they disagree, they can file an appeal and spend months trying to recover their cost, even if they don't recover from their illnesses. And it is true, people can appeal, but the first appeal goes to the insurance company that already made the denial. Well, what do you think they're going to say? They may reverse their decision, but maybe not. Then it's going to go to an advocate who, again, is going to make another decision. And then that's denied. Then they have to actually go to a federal judge to appeal. And so there's this long process that now these people have to participate in. So it's very frustrating for them. So article goes on to say, we take patients who are going to die of their diseases within a 3-month period of time, and we force them into denial and appeals process that lasts up to 2.5 years, said Chris Comfort, the chief operating officer of Calvary Hospital, which is a palliative and hospice facility in Bronx, New York. And as he said, of Medicare Advantage. So what happens is the appeal outlast the beneficiary. Many of them are going to pass away during this period of time. The algorithms sit at the beginning of the process, and that's really the problem here. They start the process and start laying down the foundation for what all these providers of their care are expected to do as far as discharge dates and the services they're going to be received. So it starts the process, promising to deliver personalized care and better outcomes. But patient advocates said in many cases they do the exact opposite, spitting out recommendations that fail to adjust for a patient's individual circumstances and conflict with basic rules on what Medicare plans must cover. Medicare has already spelled out what they're going to cover. Medicare Advantage plans are supposed to match those services. And again, oftentimes they do not. In this instance, someone going into a skilled nursing facility, an original Medicare, Medicare covers everything the first 20 days. There should be no question that they're entitled to that care. Medicare Advantage plans don't want to stay that long because, again, they're the ones that are participating in footing the bill for those expenses. And so their algorithms override some of the basic Medicare rules. That's what they're trying to point out to us, which is a real problem. And then notice this sentence. In interviews, doctors, medical directors, and hospital administrators described increasingly frequent Medicare Advantage payment denials for care routinely covered in traditional Medicare. An example of this would be from Brian Moore, a physician and advocate for patients that are denied access to care at North Carolina-based Atrium Healthcare, recalled visiting a stroke patient who was blocked from moving to a rehabilitation hospital for 10 days. Should have been there. And yet he was not able to get to this rehab, sufficient skilled nursing facility care after a stroke. He was sitting there, Brian says, trying to feed himself. He was like, I just never thought when I signed up for Medicare Advantage that I wouldn't be able to get the care I needed, he said. He was drooling and crying. The cost of caring for older patients recovering from serious illnesses and injuries, known as post-acute care, has long created friction between insurers and providers. For decades, facilities like nursing homes racked up hefty profit margins by keeping patients as long as possible, sometimes billing Medicare for care that wasn't necessary or even delivered. And so again, that's the way the system was abused by these providers. And Medicare, was the one that was really abused by this. But when Medicare Advantage takes over someone's account, they're a for-profit company, so they're going to scrutinize this very heavily, and they're not going to allow themselves to be taken advantage of in this way. And so what has happened? The pendulum swung the other way. And now, instead of people being able to stay those full 20 days or even beyond, they're saying, no, we need to move them out of these facilities quicker. Why? Because it's impacting their bottom line. Now, notice this, something very interesting. the enactment of the Affordable Care Act in 2010 created an opportunity for reform. In other words, in this whole situation of this tension really between the insurance companies and the providers. Let's keep going. Instead of paying for care after the fact, as the system had for years before 2010, policy experts proposed flipping the payment paradigm on its head. Providers will be paid a lump sum upfront, incentivizing them to use fewer resources to deliver better outcomes. So that was the goal. Now, notice this. Enter here Tom Scully. Right here in the middle of the paragraph, it says, Tom Scully, the former head of the Center for Medicare Medicaid Services under George W. Bush, shared those concerns, this tension between providers and insurers, but he also saw something else, a potential billion-dollar business. So here's what Scully does. Scully drew up plans for Nava Health just as the new law was taking effect. In other words, he starts laying out the foundation for this new artificial intelligence system. Its payments reforms align perfectly with the Medicare Advantage program that he had played a pivotal role in creating during the Bush administration. Scully knew how those insurance plans worked. He also knew they were taking a financial beating in post-acute care. Very well aware of that. He was in the business. He ran that department. He said, look, I love the nursing home guys, but there were a lot of patients coming out of hospitals spending 20 days in a nursing home in Medicare Advantage because that's what the Medicare rules allowed. In other words, Medicare Advantage was supposed to be matching that, so Medicare Advantage plans were also having to allow patients to stay there 20 days. And then notice he said here it was just like Pavlov's bell. Meaning this, the nursing home guys were conditioned to think that when someone left a hospital going into skilled nursing, that they were going to be able to keep them 20 days and they'd be covered by Medicare. And they loved, that position because then they could bill Medicare a tremendous amount of money. But now enter Medicare Advantage, well, they're not going to allow that. They're going to do everything they can to make sure those people don't stay those full 20 days. And Scully recognized that Medicare Advantage plans would be motivated to move people out of the skilled nursing facilities quicker. So again, the year is 2010. The Affordable Care Act has been passed. And then notice, Scully heard of a small shop called Senior Metrics that was working on this type of post-acute data and analytics. In other words, creating algorithms. The firm quickly won him over. They had an algorithm. Scully said on the podcast, I saw it and said, this is it. So he wrote a $6 million check to buy the company, which he rebranded to Nava Health. Scully then raised $25 million from his wealthy friends and companies, including the health system Ascension and the rehabilitation hospital chain Select Medical, and coaxed another $25 million from Wells Carson. Okay, now Nava Health started making its sales pitch to Medicare Advantage plans. Let us manage every piece of your members' care for the first 60 to 90 days after they are discharged from the hospital, and we'll all share in any savings. Now, the sweetener was the technology. One of the company's core products is an algorithm called NH Predict. It uses details such as a person's diagnosis, age, living situation, physical function to find similar individuals in a database of 6 million patients that is compiled over years of working with providers. And again, computer has to have this data, so there's millions of records and millions of clients and the history of what they have experienced in these post-acute facilities. It then generates an assessment of the patient's mobility and cognitive capacity, along with a down-to-the-minute prediction of their medical needs. Down to the minute. Again, computer making these decisions, estimated length of stay, and target discharge date. Again, like this lady we talked about, Ms. Walter, 16.6 days was the target date for her to be discharged. So in a 6-page report, the algorithm boils down patients and their unknowable journey through healthcare. Of course, they can't know because it's just simply data. These people are individuals that take different medications, have different health history. So again, it's unknowable to the algorithm and their unknowable journey through healthcare and into a tiny series of numbers and graphs. The product was a revelation to insurers, giving them a way to mathematically track patients' progress and hold providers accountable for meeting therapy goals. By the summer of 2015, Nava Health was managing post-acute care for more than 2 million people whose insurance plans had contracted with the company. Why did they contract with the company? Well, because they did not want to spend any more money than they had to on post-acute care. So now they have this data that is going to drive these decisions. It was also working with 75 hospitals and clinics clinics seeking to more carefully manage contracts in which they shared financial responsibility for holding down costs. That's their goal. At the time, spending on post-acute care accounted to $200 billion annually. You can see why Scully wanted to get involved in this huge business, $200 billion a year being spent.
Hey, if you're finding this video helpful, I want to invite you to go right up here and actually click on a link that will allow you to watch what I call the Medicare Essentials Workshop. It's a workshop that I did that really is going to show you everything you need to know about Medicare from A to Z, how to enroll, when to enroll, and the plan options for you. So go to that link and check it out.
She says, but the algorithms report is never communicated with the clients. In other words, they don't know this is all going on behind the scenes. Right? She said they only find out, and she only finds out about these reports after filing a legal complaint, meaning these insurance companies are not disclosing this information to the patients. They're not aware of this. And again, when she gets involved, and of course legally, she says we want to see what's happened behind the scenes. So then she gets these reports. That's all run secretly. Nava Health said the findings of the algorithm, if not the report itself, are routinely shared with doctors and patients to help guide the care. A director at one post-acute facility said denials from United Healthcare and Nava Health are now the norm for many of their patients, even if they are clearly sicker than what the algorithm projects. So the stat reports continues to say that if concerns about the algorithms have begun to surface in legal filings and public letters to Medicare, they remain almost entirely out of sight for patients like Dolores Milam, another person here that is an example of this situation, who fell and broke her leg on a summer day in 2020. After surgery, she began her stay in a Wisconsin nursing home on August the 3rd, again 2020. Like many older patients, Milam arrived with a complicated medical history, including coronary artery disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, and chronic pain, according to court records. Her doctor had ordered that she stay off her leg for at least 6 weeks. So she breaks her leg, obviously has a tremendous amount of health problems. And again, as we look at the algorithm, it's not going to look at that. It's just looking at a history of other patients who broke their leg. But again, if a physician is primarily the one that's going to be part of this decision, they're going to be aware of these other issues, blood pressure problems, chronic pain, coronary artery disease, all these very serious issues. They're going to have an impact upon the decisions. And again, algorithm's not going to know that. Let's keep going. So it says, nevertheless, the algorithm used by her insurer, United Healthcare, predicted that she would only need to stay for 15 days until August the 18th, according to records obtained by staff. So just a couple days after that date, Milam received notice that payment for her care had been terminated. Now, keep in mind, Doc says she needs to stay off the leg for 6 weeks. And so it was 4 p.m. on a Friday. Now we insert her daughter. So her daughter says, I must have made, I'm not kidding, 100 phone calls just to figure out where she could go and why this was happening, said Milam's daughter, Holly Hennessy, who also received the notice. She said she couldn't fathom United Healthcare's conclusion that her mother, unable to move or even go to the bathroom on her own, no longer met Medicare coverage requirements. Of course, she met Medicare coverage requirements, just not the algorithm's requirements. She said you try to call and reason with somebody and get explanations, and you're talking to somebody in the Philippines. She said it's simply a process thing to them and has nothing to do with care. Let's keep going. When she received the denial, Milam could not put weight on her left leg and was being moved with a Hoyer lift, which is a large freestanding harness used to transport patients who can't use their legs. She also required 24-hour care to help with dressing, eating, and other basic tasks, according to court records. In a note filed after payment was denied, meaning United Healthcare already made their decision that she only needed 15 days of care, this speech therapist enters into the situation and writes this: PT or patient is not yet safe to live independently. She will need assistance with medication administration and supervision with ADLs, which are activities of daily living, due to memory deficits, making her unsafe. Algorithm would not understand that, could not bring that into the equation. Hennessy said she had no choice but to keep her mother in the nursing home, Evansville Manor, and hoped the payment denial would get overturned. By then, the bills were quickly piling up. Now notice this: Medicare rules call for a 5-stage appeal process. The first appeal appeal goes directly to the insurer. They get to make a decision. They've already made a denial, and now they're going to have the opportunity again to decide. So if denied, then the patient can ask an outside entity known as a quality improvement organization to reconsider. So Hennessy and her mother were denied at both levels, forcing them to consider an appeal to a federal judge, a process that takes months and requires filling out reams of paperwork. Somewhere in her blitz of phone calls, Hennessy heard about the Greater Wisconsin Agency on Aging Resources, which agreed to take up her case. So in late October, Milam returned home from the nursing home after a nearly 3-month recovery. Remember what the insurer had said. You should be ready to go home after 15 days. So 3 months. She's in the skilled nursing facility. The bill was almost $40,000. A few days later, her appeal came before a judge. So the judge's final ruling was issued on November 25th. And remember, this whole incident started in July when she breaks her leg and was supposed to only be in the skilled nursing facility for 15 days, according to the algorithm. So now we're fast forwarded now several months. And this ruling found instead that it was the insurer that hadn't given any good reason to deny care for a patient who was still a safety risk. The judge said her treatment should be paid for in full. So again, once a person looks at the situation, a different outcome. So in the months afterward, Hennessy herself crossed the age threshold into Medicare eligibility. And remember, Hennessy is the daughter who is trying to work this case with her mother to make sure she got proper care and had it all taken care of financially. And so now this daughter is eligible for Medicare. And she said a friend who sold Medicare Advantage plans had always expected her to get her business when she turned 65. I just told him, I can't do it. I've lived with this nightmare. Hennessy recalled the conversation ended their friendship until the neighbor called back a couple of years later following a struggle with his own Medicare Advantage insurer over a knee replacement. He called me, Hennessy said, to apologize for having gotten so bent out of shape. I've still got friends who say, oh, I've got United Healthcare Medicare Advantage, and it's wonderful. And she said, well, it is until you need the big stuff. Now, folks, my intention in sharing this article with you was not to scare you from getting an Advantage plan. I said at the very outset, sometimes it is the very best fit, maybe the only fit for people. But sometimes people really don't understand these kinds of issues that they may have to deal with when they go on to an Advantage plan. And so we're just simply trying to make you aware of this, because when you go on Medicare, sometimes the decision you make could be lifetime. You're going to have to live with the consequences of that. I'd like to close out our video today with a handwritten note that I received from a lady from San Francisco, California. And here's what she says. Dear Marvin, I just wanted to thank you for all your Medicare YouTube presentations. They are professional, easy to understand, especially for seniors, and your sincerity is always shown through. You have taught me invaluable information of which I shall be forever grateful. I lost my husband in August of 2022 due to a premature discharge from a skilled nursing facility from a United Healthcare Advantage plan. He was 74 years old. Thanks again. And she signs the card. I share that with you because I don't know all the details of this story whatsoever, but I do know that she says there was a premature discharge from an Advantage plan. And so as I read this article and been studying about the impact of artificial intelligence and the algorithms that are now used to determine someone's care, I thought back to this note and I realized, could it have been that the algorithm was the one that decided that her husband should have been discharged from the skilled nursing facility, which she says she believes led to his death. And that's why we shared this very, very important information with you. Thanks for watching.